Surprisingly, the first thing that the investors were more interested in was what kind of people were we and how passionate or how much were we ready to pursue our ideas ahead. And there was a different kind of expectation to what we saw in reality.
We are three friends who met in college and now are working in diverse fields across the globe. Curious to know about what our friends are up to. So here we are, connecting, talking, and learning from our friends. In this podcast, we are sharing extraordinary insights from our not so ordinary friends, working in various industries and sharing their stories and their journey so far. These are your hosts, Hiloni Panatar,
Atit Kothari,
and Tapan Desai.
And this is What the Hat. Subscribe to the podcast so you don't miss on any episodes. We have today with us Virang Javeri, who is a founder of PicoStone, which manufactures smart home products. And let us start our journey with him and understand how he has gone from a college student to owning a company which has already got an investment of 5 crore rupees.
Awesome. Before we begin, I wanted to say something like I know Virang for like 10 years now. I knew about him even before DJ through our mutual friend Niket. He used to talk a lot about Virang. And then I finally got to meet him in college. We worked on a bunch of college festival related events. Even build an app for a local startup. I don't know if you remember, Virang.
Yeah, I do.
I don't know if it ever saw the day of light, but it was fun. And every time that I've interacted with Virang, I've learned something new. So this should be fun.
Yeah, and that same year, every time I've interacted with Atit, it has been an amazing learning curve for us.
Let's begin from the top. Why engineering, Virang? Was there any particular reason that you decided to do engineering and not anything else?
So I believe it's the interest, right? So I've always been interested into the tech stuff, into building products. I started coding in the 8th, 9th standard. That's primarily because of ICSE had a curriculum like that. So that has actually helped me shape the career choice.
Nice. So you selected like computer related products, courses, even in ICSE?
Oh yeah. So since the 8th, 9th, we did have programming in C++, and that has actually helped me understand.
You were an EXTC, right? So like what led you to EXTC instead of computer engineering?
Okay, so during the admissions of DJ Sangvi, so pre-DJ Sangvi, I always wanted to get into comms. Okay, but then during the admission process, I started researching a lot more, and I started realizing that the kind of understanding and scope of learning that is there in the electronics is slightly greater than in the comm section, considering the Mumbai University curriculum.
And like, how has your college journey been? Like throughout DJ, what has been your key takeaways from your experience at DJ?
So it has been pretty fun and a lot of learning throughout the journey. So I've got the opportunity to work on a really good technical projects, as well as I got to chair a technical festival, Pulse. And this has actually helped me a lot in the current startup as well. So there are a few things that I learned back then in Pulse, like financial management, budgeting, teamwork, and all the three principles have still been helping me in Pico. And I believe it's going to go a long way with me ahead.
And is there a relevance between you managing like a bunch of like 40 people in Pulse to also managing like a team of yours in Pico now?
There's a very high relevance because in Pulse, as we all have been a part of it, there were departments and there were certain kind of teamwork that's required to actually be able to execute. It's a very similar thing in startups as well, right? So you've got your departments, you've got department heads, and they need to achieve a common goal. The only difference becomes that with Pulse, you just have one final milestone of the day of the event. With a startup, it's an ongoing process where you keep updating your milestones and keep hitting towards it.
I mean, college festivals have taught us so much that things that we can apply into our current businesses and our offices. I mean, it brings us a lot of sense of purpose and how we manage things back then to what are the best practices we can bring along.
Went to DJ, you graduated from EXCC program, you did a bunch of festivals. So like what happened like after your after you graduated from DJ, like what was your journey from there? And then I believe you got placed in, like you started working for Diebold. So like, what was that like?
Okay, so the journey post engineering college was more of a very large learning curve, which was greater than college, because as you all know, Diebold is a ATM manufacturing company and it's one of the largest in the world. I got to work on a really large code base with a really large team and on extremely critical components like the ATM. This has still been helping me shape the hardware and software team at PicoStone. So the learning curve has been far greater post engineering at a real workplace.
Okay. So like, can you give an example of like what was your role in Diebold and like what were you doing there exactly? And then how that has helped into your startup?
I was a software application developer there. I was working on the screens on the ATM and on the mainframe that is there in the ATM. That is actually the most important component because it interacts with all the low layer hardwares that are there. So all those card readers, or let's say your fingerprint readers, or the cash dispensing machine, it is supposed to interact with all of that, orchestra a perfect experience for the end user. This has given me an exposure into hardware functionality with software. And PicoStone is a mix of all of these. It's a hardware company which has a very strong software backend. And I've learned a lot and applied a lot from Diebold into this.
From going from like your experience at Diebold and having such a good experience where you're learning continuously, what made you suddenly want to decide that, okay, probably I want to do something of my own or start my own company?
Okay, so you pretty much know me. You'll know that I'm a very tech-oriented person and I like building tech products. This has actually driven me to start my own company. I wanted to get into a space which was a mix of hardware and software because that is where my expertise or my passion also lies. And there was a very, very important thing and a lacking point I saw in India. India did not have a very strong hardware infrastructure or a very good hardware company. Whenever you ask a hardware engineer or an electronic engineer, which is the core field he's going to get to work after engineering, there are not any great companies to name and not a lot of companies. And I believe that is what I wanted to create. I always wanted to create a hardware company in India that allows people to work on a variety of products and something that is challenging.
Before we move more into PicoStone and what you guys do, I wanted to know your perspective on why didn't you go for a higher education? Why didn't you do a master's?
Okay, so this has been a question that most of the people have been asking and still are asking me. Okay, so I felt that I had an urge to start building things and I wanted to get hands-on, then go through one more round of education. And I also felt that a higher education and then coming back to, so a higher education would mostly be in US and I always wanted to stay in India. And I thought that is a mismatch and I hence wanted to pursue a startup in India itself.
Great. Give us an elevator pitch of PicoStone.
Okay. So imagine you want to watch a movie. You're sitting on the sofa with your legs on the coffee table. You call your help to draw the curtains, to lower the AC temperature, to dim your lights, to turn the TV on, and then to turn to Netflix. How much time do you think she would take? 3 to 4 minutes. But if you talk to Alexa, she would do this in under a second using our devices. This is what is luxury. Hi, I'm Virang Javeri, founder of PicoStone Technology. We make smart home products for luxurious living.
We should probably add some applause at the end.
We are investor ready.
So like how many rounds of cleaning to that elevator pitch like did you do in order to get to this finished product?
A lot of team brainstorming, a lot of inside outside company discussions, a lot of in these 3 years, a lot.
I would
believe initially you were not into like selling it as a luxury product, right? You wanted to, at least from the very beginning when I met you, I think in the first 6 months of the startup, you were majorly looking at making it more mass available and available for a lot more people than just being only for the top few or luxury segment.
Correct. But that perspective hasn't changed much. Okay, I'm seeing a luxurious experience, but the price point is actually affordable, making sure that it can reach a really wider audience.
And like, why did you pick this industry? Like, why did you choose to solve this problem?
Okay, so back in 2015, when I started up, my little research did tell me that there are 11 crore urban households. That's a huge market, and there's a large technology gap to serve them with automation. The kind of automation technology that existed was the real gap out there to be able to serve so many. And then the whole Make in India was actually something that I wanted to pursue. So the crossroads of these three have actually been the reason to pick this industry.
Right. Okay. I understand. And like, did you start brainstorming this idea when you were working full time with Diebold as a side hustle, or like you stopped working and then you were like, okay, I need to pursue a different idea. I want to start up or something like that. Like, how did the initial seed of the idea begin?
So obviously it was a side hustle. There was already a small prototype was ready and running at my home before I left Diebold and pursued it full time.
But like when you were doing research of this industry, and like we all know, there are like certain market leaders like GM. What made you want to create something beyond that? And how did you have that understanding that probably they are still not evolved to the whole software hardware integration phase yet?
Okay, so I did move out in the industry, checked various products, and I did realize that what they were using is something that is around 10-15 years old. They were more into the hardwired solution, and the pace at which a really large company moves towards innovation is quite slow. And there was a visible gap that you could do something better and something more wireless and bring on a change. Going head on with them was the first difficult, and it is quite challenging to go head on with these companies and deep pockets, the kind of marketing budgets they have. But with a great product, I think so, and a good customer acquisition strategy, I believe that could be beaten in some more years down the road.
I mean, yeah, because like we know the way these structures work and how their B2B model is placed, there is a lot of incentivization and all of those in terms of acquisition for their B2B channels. So
Yes.
How do you do it? Like, do you have like a B2B channel set up, or is it purely like from PicoStone to the end consumer directly?
So we have a hybrid model. We do have PicoStone to end user. That's a complete B2C model, and we do have a dealer distributor network that helps us penetrate various cities in India. We use a mix. We use both.
And how tough was it for your acquisition of these dealers, distributors, for them to believe in your product?
I would say it took us the entire initial 2 years to actually break into the network. It's a very deep industry with 40 to 50-year-old companies in this, like the Lutron and the Crestron, and making those guys come to a newer technology, which is though far simpler for them to install, but a new brand, new people, that was a tough challenge for us. They had to use our products for some period of time before they would start installing in their customers' houses.
What was your toughest challenge? Like, what did you come across that you were not like, you were surprised to see? And like, was it like building a new team, raising money, or like talking to the distributors? Like, what was it exactly?
So as a startup, as we all know, that there'll be challenges after challenges, but the very first challenge was primarily building the tech product out. Though a techie, though completely interested into this, the kind of the spread of technology was really great, was really vast, I would say. There is hardware, there is embedded, there is mobile apps, and then there is the cloud. The spread is really large, and we have taken it upon ourselves to develop it in-house without outsourcing a single part of it. Also, resources were not that great when we initially began, and that had just like 3 of us, me and 2 more interns, building the entire thing out. So that was really challenging and tough.
Okay, like, how did you approach learning all these new technologies? Like you said, cloud and then embedded systems and things like that. Like, how did you, like, where did you start?
So a lot of thing was, as problems arises or let's say fields I want to get into, when I read about it online, I work on a few side projects that get me to learn and understand those concepts, and then go back to the main product and apply it on that. So it has been that I began with a very low layer PCB designing, and then the component selections, and then I went back to the embedded software that runs onto it, and then I learned about a real-time OS that needs to run on top of that. And then mobile apps, I slightly knew about it from previous. servers, I did work with the interns quite a lot, and there was something new like the Node.js and how does a single thread application run was quite a fascinating learning.
Yeah, like are you still hands-on into those things?
Yeah. I do work still on the product, but I would not say as hands-on as I was initially. I've started more towards being more customer-focused, more customer-centric, trying to understand their needs and values, and putting that into the feedback loop and improvising the product.
So what does that process look like? How do you collect feedback from the customer? What is your play testing method like?
Okay, so with us, it's very simple. Okay, I meet my customers on a regular basis. By regular, I mean on an everyday basis, either customers or prospective customers. I still do demo of my product. I still go ahead, do normal telecall to get more leads, talk to interior designers, architects. This constant process of interacting with customers, or even post-delivery, the first call to understand, what are the features they like. This is the constant feedback that is coming, and that is a very simple process. Just keep talking to them and meeting them. But the first interaction is more of interacting, making notes after you have a discussion with the customer.
Any interesting insights?
Okay, so initially we did not know how big the voice control thing would get. But in the recent 8 months, what we've learned is any user who has an Alexa and buys our product, they become 95% users from Alexa. And that's a massive shift. They forget about the switchboards, they forget about everything around, and Alexa becomes their central point of communication. And that is actually disrupting the industry in a very different manner. We don't know what's going to lie beyond the few years now, but Alexa or Google Home, any of these voice assistant is going to be the center pin for everything smart and everything controllable in homes.
I think one of the challenges that probably even I have seen across in India is that a lot of people are open to buying this product and probably having it on board, but like changing your entire system, probably getting your lights which are automated and getting your other functionalities which are further automated is something where people are very reluctant to change it. And I think that's where you must be like having that whole challenge of like convincing them to do that, right?
Yeah. So making them aware of what is the use case and how it will be affecting their lives and how simplifying their lives would be is what Indians need to be made sure. That is something that you have to communicate to the end users.
Mm-hmm. And then like this might be a stupid question, but like is there a language barrier? Like Alexa just takes command in English, or like they can use Hindi, Gujarati or something like that?
So it allows other languages, right? It does allow Hindi, and you can go ahead and communicate in Hindi with Alexa.
Yeah, I was just about to ask that. Also the accents, because sometimes it's, at least when I was working with voice assistants like 2 years back, it was very difficult to recognize anything except for like American or British accents. But I think they've improved a lot over the years. What are your thoughts?
Yeah. They've improved a lot. They do now have a language called English India. So they started adapting their understanding of the language to Indian and the voice to the Indian ecosystem.
Yeah, I've gifted Google Home to like more than 5 people back in India. So definitely there's the market is getting flooded with voice assistants.
I would say every new renovating home would be having one. Or every second home would be having a voice assistant these days.
I think there's like a huge army of engineers dedicated to towards Alexa ecosystem. I know like there's 10 people working on making sure Alexa knows what a fan is. So I think there's a lot of investment being made in voice assistants and Alexa in particular to build a whole ecosystem. It would understand everything that you talk to it.
Yeah, I believe there is a huge potential that is there in voice assistants.
Yeah. And Virang, do you have a favorite? Like, do you prefer Google Home or Alexa or something?
Okay. So my favorite is Alexa over Google Home, primarily because it has more functionalities and it has evolved way more than Google Home.
In what sense? So from my perspective, I've used Alexa and Google Home both, but like for me, search results were more important. and I thought Google did a better job. So that was my use case. You can explain yours.
Okay, so if you have to orchestrate devices and you have to create like a routine that does your lights on and off and your AC, and you want to play a soft music, or let's say you wanted to reply back, all of this is much better in an Alexa than in Google Home. So the routine section of Alexa is really fantastic. You can set up your particular keyword. So let's say you want to say night mode, and then henceforth if you say Alexa night mode, it will execute the routine that you want.
And then Vedant, like going back to Cryptostone, like are some of your like major products, and like how did you go about building them?
We've got 3 products primarily. The first one being Picostone Basic. This was the first product that we've developed also. This is a small retrofitting device, goes behind your switchboard and lets you automate 4 of your switches. So by automation, I mean they are available on your smartphone as well as on voice assistants, and you could schedule them and create scenes around it. The second device is a Polar. This is a no line of sight IR blaster. This can be used for any of your controls of any of your IR devices like your ACs, TVs, set-top boxes. And the third device is a curtain controller. This controls and brings any of the motorized curtains onto your smartphone and Alexa control.
Okay, and like these are 3 products, so like anyone can buy any particular product, and like if they keep adding new products, like it works as a mesh, I'm assuming, and then like they connect to each other.
Yeah, so these are standalone devices that connect to your Wi-Fi router. So you can pick and place what you want. You can just begin with one device and then experiment and then keep adding as you go.
Yeah, I think now I would want to jump onto the whole investment gathering experience of yours, and how did you receive funding? But before we start that, like at what point of your startup did you realize that, okay, now is the time where we would want to require funding and you want to get some investors on board?
I would say the time when, we got our first customer, where we knew there is a market that exists for that, and we know the product market fit of that, was actually when we started approaching for investors. We'd already closed the customer before actually we got the first investment.
So, I mean, it was majorly in order to scale and to improve the product that you were looking at. Okay.
Yes, moving into large scale production. So the first product was actually delivered as a 3D printed product. And funding has helped us to move into, getting molds, getting the right shape and branding towards it.
So do you guys manufacture your own stuff, or do you outsource it?
And that's given for JobWorks. So the designing and everything is done in-house. Post that, it's given for a JobWork and it is outsourced.
Nice. And that's in India or China? Or
it's in India. Everything is in India.
Make in India theme.
Right?
You realized that, okay, you all needed this, and then how did you decide on what kind of investor did you want for your company? Because like it's not just the monetary benefit that you get out of the investor, right? There is a lot more that. So how was that journey for you?
So we were pretty keen on getting an investor who did have a tech background for sure, who was extremely interested in tech, and would be preferable if they had built their own tech company out. So that was always a preference. We wanted those kind of investors we already want to work with. Hence, NASSCOM 10,000 startup at a small event they organized in Navi Mumbai. That's where we met Mr. Nilesh Jain, who was our first investor. And that particular expo was for all the tech investors to meet tech companies. So that was an ideal platform for us to meet the right investors for our company.
What were you feeling emotionally when you went there? Were you scared? Were you anxious?
So I would say anxious a lot about, it's like the outside world, don't know what they're going to ask me. It was like, that was just the third time I was meeting an investor. I was meeting people from the investment background. And I was expecting it to be more into a question answer and getting deep diving into the unit economics, or let's say, how this is going to get manufactured, how we're going to deliver. But surprisingly, the first thing that the investors were more interested in was what kind of people were we and how passionate or how much were we ready to pursue our ideas ahead. And there was a different kind of expectation to what we saw in reality.
So at the time, it was only you, or you had someone with you?
So I had Niket with me.
Okay. Did that help, having a partner, or do you think you should? It's better if you're alone?
Oh no, so definitely helps a lot. So considering, so it's a very industry and a startup and a personal specific, so it vary from people to people. But for me and for Pico, I believe it was one of the best things that could have happened. Considering the vast operations that we have, that is, the tech, the operation, the installations and the configurations of the support, the marketing, the sales, it's a pretty wide thing. And it's always better to have people that you know from childhood or from early life that are along with you in the ups and downs of the company. 7 years before going ahead as founding within the company, so that has been really great.
So what stage of Pico did you get him on board, or when did he start getting involved with Pico?
So we were still in I would say an early proto stage, not yet sold the device to anybody, but we had started 3D printing it, and yeah, it was a very early phase. The product was working well at home and office, but not yet given out to customers to use.
That was like a very early founding stage.
Yeah, very hard. It's just that the idea and the product in the prototype phase is ready. Nothing on a design scale or how is this going to be rolled out in the market was ready, and that is where his expertise into design came into great play.
Yours and Niket's role, like they were decided on its own, or like you had to sit down and discuss like this will be your role in this Pico Stone, and then I will be doing this in the company, or like it just fell into place?
So we knew each other 7 years before founding Pico Stone. I would say it was extremely smooth. It just got into the correct molds that we had to, the correct role that we had to. We both understood our strengths, and we're playing into it.
You must have faced a lot of setbacks or failures, something like that. Like, is there any favorite failure that you had to face, and what were the lessons that you learned from that?
I would circle this back to a conversation that we previously had, the B2B segment and the distribution model. That was one of. So initially, we were completely focused on B2B market, building a dealer distributor network, and they would be selling it. They would be our frontline people. They would be talking to customers. And that actually did not meet the kind of expectations we had in terms of growth and in terms of sales. And that was a setback. We had invested over 2.5 years to figure out that model, coming to realize that it doesn't really work as per our expectations and the growth that we wanted. That's where the whole change and the B2C model of Pico Stone and getting deeper into the customer acquisition side, understanding more customers, and being customer first company has evolved and transformed. That has been a really good setback, though we spent a lot of years into it, but learned a lot.
If someone from DJ is starting a company at this point, like what would your advice be to them?
Listen to the market, go speak to your prospective customers, get deeper understanding of what sort of value are you bringing to your customers, and be in extreme close connect with your customers. They're going to teach you a lot throughout your journey.
So being customer focused, and that was the failure that we learned from us.
Yes.
And like Virang, if you had to bring out like the biggest myth of starting your own company that people generally have, what would yours be?
Okay, so it would be that it's a very common saying, build the best of the greatest product, and the users of the crowd will follow. This is the biggest myth, and I believe, Hironi, you would be more being from a marketing background and having a startup into the marketing. I believe you would completely agree with me on this. That is just not building a great product, but actually going out, talking to people, making people experience a product which is going to get you the kind of user base that you want.
Completely agree. I mean, your product can only get you so far. It's everything beyond that you do is where your brand would stand, would define. So it's a lot more into getting into meeting the right people and getting your right distributor channels, and then getting your right marketing out. People wanting to be your customers, not just like having your products, but being more loyalist to you and using your product continuously. That would be another primary requirement for brands like yours.
Yeah, this is the myth.
So what does your day look like?
So after the whole realization, right now my day is pretty majorly focused on meeting customers and interacting with more customers, understanding that what value, and are we delivering the value that he wants, and how we can constantly take that feedback and keep evolving in terms of the product and the experience.
Do you collect data, and do you make decisions for your next product by looking at the data?
So we do aggregate data. So we have aggregated data of how our customers are using. So we do know what percentage is the usage from the switchboards, what percentage usage is from the Alexa, what percentage usage from the smartphone. And these insights are actually helping us shape where our dev efforts should go, and what is the next integration that we might want to pick. So like we saw a rise in the usage of Alexa or voice assistants. That is actually, so we initially only had Alexa. We then got into the Google Home, understanding that any guy who uses voice assistant is a loyal user and a power user in our terms. So we adapted more voice assistants. We're looking at adapting Siri also, integrating with Siri as a next step. So the data that comes back, the insights that is actually guiding the path ahead.
Siri, okay, all the best with that. Google Assistant is much better at picking up my accent and my voice compared to Siri, but I guess it's just me. Do you have any side projects going on right now?
Side projects, none as particular, but because of COVID, I've learned how to cook.
Oh, nice.
Really good now.
What do you cook?
Your wife would be happy for sure.
So I made cheesecakes. Yeah, so that was fun in learning as well as making it. And I can make most of the Italian things like the pastas, the pizzas, mac and cheese. Even in the Indians, I can make Punjabi, I can make. South Indian, not yet experimented once also. So, yeah.
Did you make dalgona coffee?
Oh, yeah. I think so. That was a trend and everybody has done it.
Yeah, literally everybody. Like for the first 2 weeks of quarantine, all I could see on my Instagram feed was dalgona coffee. But yes, how's marriage been? Firstly, congratulations on your wedding. And how has your journey been from before marriage to after marriage? Like your time distribution and the work hours, and how do you manage both of it?
Okay, so there has not been a gigantic change, not a really large change. But I have learned one thing very well in these recent 2 months, that my clothes shouldn't be lying on the chair or on the bed or on the floor for a longer amount of time. They need to be in the cupboard, up and tidy. That's one of the lessons I've learned. But on the realistic and the fronts, so we both work at Pico. So the time balancing is pretty easy. We both understand the work requirements and we travel together back and forth office. Yeah, so that way we're pretty sorted in terms of time management.
Mm-hmm. But how do you compartmentalize not bringing work home?
I would say not yet mastered it. Long way to go for that. Work discussions still happen at home.
I'm sure. And I think it might work for certain couples. Like not everybody needs that complete compartmentalization. So it's for each its own.
Yeah, time will say, what else.
Yeah. What does your wife do at Pico?
She takes care of growth and marketing at Pico. She was a techie, began with servers, and now she takes care of growth and marketing.
And Virang, going back to Pico, do you guys have a motto or a tagline or any principle that you live by? For example, Google saying don't do any evil, or Amazon saying customer first. What's the tagline for Pico Store?
So we say live effortlessly.
I like that.
Yeah, same. And also your name also, I was reading where Pico is a very small number and store means that it's a device that you can put anywhere, the mobility of the device, right? That's how you... So you came up with the name. How did you guys think about the name?
Okay, so this was a discussion with my childhood friend Daksh. We spent around 2 to 3 days getting over this whole naming the company thing. And finally, we felt that the Pico was actually something that would match with the company's perspective and what the company wants to do. So, Hironi, so how has Webshakers? What's the story behind it?
So for us, Webshakers, we had come up with multiple names that we wanted to probably have. And then obviously with our marketing background and thinking, it has to be SEO friendly. And when people type it, they should understand what our services are. We came up with a bundle of them. And Webshakers was one of them as well, crowdsourcing couple of names from friends and family. And then we sat down and did like the whole data analysis behind it. Is the domain available? Are all the social media available? And then we finally narrowed it down to like four of them. And then, I mean, it had to be like, okay, which one made more sense to us or which one related more to us? And then we stumbled upon Webshakers, okay. Something that we want to do purely like in the progressive digital space. And that's where we got to Webshakers.
It's sticky and it's sticky.
So what do you think? How is your journey ahead for PicoStone, for yourself? What are your future plans now?
So this whole COVID is actually disrupting our entire strategies. In the near term, whatever strategy we had may not what will continue to work, depending upon the time that India comes out of lockdown, what kind of an economy, consumption economy it's going to be in. It's going to change a lot of strategies, but I would say that we want to build a more profitable model going forward. We would, for the next 1 year, we would be more focused on growing it more organically and making sure that our unit economics and our profitability is really great.
How are you guys accounting for this COVID-19?
Okay, so it doesn't look like India is going to recover before October really, really well. Most likely, it should open it may open staggered from May, but the complete lockdown should be post-June. And since all the work on the renovating homes have come to a standstill, now all the work will begin. People have migrated to their villages. Bringing them back and getting them back to work is also going to be a big task in India. It's going to actually slow down a lot of demand, and a lot of people are going to change their budgets. People are going to spend differently. It's going to be a whole different economy post the COVID. There are going to be new companies that are going to rise and disrupt. Like anything that is more remote and more virtual is actually going to survive a lot. Yeah, it's going to be a different economy. We believe the next 1 year, instead of having a consumption economy, we would go into more of a savings economy where we try and reduce cost, make sure that we are saving every penny that we spend.
How's remote working going on for y'all? Like, are y'all working remotely right now?
Yeah. But I would say we only 50% of our team is actually being able to work onto it. We're a more operations-driven company where our projects have, like, the delivery of the projects requires us to go ahead and install, requires us to demo the product, or the customer needs to come to our office to view the demo or the products. That entire activity is halted. The only thing that happens is the entire dev is still going on the software front, and all the processes, the manuals, keeping the team more trained and more motivated is the activity that's going on.
Right. So, how are you specifically, you and Niket, motivating the team?
So the dev team is easy. They're working always on challenging problems. So that's not where we got onto. But on a sales team, we do have regular pitching sessions, like fun sessions to pitch each other, have short competitions on Zoom, and keep interacting. Though we do try reach out to a few customers or figure out do some webinars for interior designers and architects. Those are the things. So this constantly interaction between the team, which is keeping it motivated.
At the further perspective for PicoStone, like in future, probably down the line 5 years, 10 years, are you looking at expanding into your number of products, or are you going to be looking at merging with like existing giants?
So we would be expanding a few product lines, not a lot. We actually don't believe in a lot of products. We have very limited products, and we believe that building a better product and having a deeper understanding of one particular segment is better than a wide range of products. So we would be having not a lot of products, but we would constantly be reinventing on the kind of strategies we could have to acquire customers and getting the more number of homes. We believe the race to the largest number of homes will begin and has already started, and that is what is important in the next 5 years.
Newton said, "If I have seen the future, it is by standing on shoulders of the giants." We bring to you these giants in the life of our guests. Our next segment is Top 3, a curated list of top 3 recommendations from our guests.
So it begins with, which are your 3 book recommendations?
That's a tough one. Okay. Foundation series, Fountainhead, and Creativity Inc.
Okay. And adding to this, like if you had to gift, which was the most gifted book of yours?
I would give Foundation series.
What's the Foundation series about?
Okay, so it's whole about a future world where robots exist and how robots can control the human beings and the evolution of the whole telepathy and robots.
Like Creativity Inc. I really like that book as
Oh
well.
yeah, it's awesome.
Yeah, gives you a good insight into how Pixar and Disney and how the animation industry works.
The top 3 lessons that you have learned that have somewhat become your guiding principles in life.
Okay, so I believe it's just pretty early in my career to actually, figure out 3, but I do have one. During, in the entire journey of the startup, I have learned that converting things to numbers and having a number-driven strategy is always better. And I've started doing everything in my life which is number-driven and which has a matrix to it.
Can you give us an example?
So initially, let's say that it's more of a sales-driven thing. But initially, in the startup, we usually have dreams like 10,000 units will get sold. Let's say 1,000 units will get sold. We don't have a math behind it. What I've learned is that there is a statistics to the percentage of conversion, the percentage to lead to demo ratios. All of these ratios matter a lot, and you can predict your revenues much better. So you know your conversion rates, you know how much money you need to put into marketing, what's your return on that investment. And that is actually, that is something that I've learned with people.
In terms of your ROI, do you actually always go number based in terms of okay, this is how much I'm investing versus this is what I'm going to acquire, or do you also look at cost of acquisition per customer versus the lifetime value as well to your brand?
So I would say that a lifetime value is quite different because it's a one-time purchase. Okay, it's a one-time purchase of the product. So if you're renovating a home, you decide on a smart home, and then you have it. That's what our lifetime value for a customer would be. So we are always focused on our CAC and our acquisition costs.
Mm-hmm. So you're not looking at software upgradations and additional features onto the software which become a paid model for customers?
No, we're not looking at that. We don't see India as a good acceptance towards a freemium model or a model where software as a service. I'm not very sure if India is really keen for it.
Maybe down the line. Okay. So what are the best or the most worthwhile investments that you have made so far? And it could be both. It could be a time investment or money investment.
Okay, so I think there is one which has actually, shaped my life. And I would say going back to 9th or 10th standard is when I bought that book of Let Us C++ and learned from that I would mark it as the best investment I've done. I spent my 3 months on it.
Unlike the name, we are dwelling deep into our guest's thought process. Rapid Fire is our next segment where our guests will answer some quirky, some weird, but mostly fun questions.
So if you could have a gigantic billboard, what would it say? A lot of people would see that billboard. What would you put on that?
Don't let others starve. Feed India. So this is something that this is a complete realization during COVID that how many people go hungry, and the kind of poverty or hunger that is killing India internally. The realization has been far greater during COVID, and I believe that's a cause that needs to be highlighted to the world.
Do you have any technology that you think would change the future that you're excited about right now?
Okay, so it would be smart home, but not that. Okay, if not that, then I believe self-driving cars. That's really going to change the world. So I don't really like driving a lot, and that is something that I think self-driving cars is something that's going to change the way transport is there. The kind of speed at which you can, you will be able to move around the city, and a lot of modifications in the size of the car. Since you don't have a driver, the car size reduces. cars could communicate to each other to make sure that the emergency, if somebody has an emergency, can move faster on the road. Those kind of things are really going to change the way the whole world is going to be.
How far off do you think that technology is?
So I believe the preliminary stages have started, but I would say to reach a decent level, another 5 years. But the kind of dreamy world and the whole area where it's going to get really perfect, maybe 10 years, 10, 12 years, a decade for sure. But 10 years is enough for us to accept it.
Don't we need to improve our infrastructure before we even get that in? That's like a bigger concern for us than everything else, because we still have stores and shops and people and pets on the road all the time.
But I believe these kind of technology, disruptions can actually lead to those changes. So like Paytm led to all of us start, using online payment. It even pushed the company slightly to have UPI and have the whole digital wallets and have the entire digital space. So I believe disruptions like these will help the government focus on infrastructure development.
Yeah, and I think like a lot of cities are still being built. Like new cities could have this infrastructure from the go, from day one. So here, like especially like in Europe or US, it might be difficult to implement those because the cities are old and everything is like so solid in a solid format. But one thing that I've noticed is India is pretty quick to change. If they decide on something, it's within few months, years, it's completely different. Like your example about digital payments, it was crazy how quickly it got adopted.
And also the lockdown, I would say that's an example that India has made.
Oh yeah, like definitely a very unified response.
I think the next thing we are seeing in India is the OTT adoption, like how every home is now very easy to able to accept it, and cables and those things are going to go out of trend very soon.
Yeah, and the kind of acquisition like Disney acquired Hotstar last year. So also making a difference.
In the age of surveillance, like what's your opinion? Data privacy is more important, or like consumer convenience is more important?
So I would say convenience is more important. Just make sure that the company or the people you're dealing with have good integrity and they're not evil.
If you had to be a CEO of one major company, what would it be, and what would be the first thing that you implement? Pico Stone won't count here.
Okay, so I think so. I would pick Udemy or any. So I would pick any of the education companies that are there, and I believe the first change that I would make would be they don't have something like a Netflix for education. I believe there's a huge scope for that, for people paying a subscription and learning something new month on month. There's a huge market for it.
Varang, what advice would you give to a smart-driven college students who's entering the real world right now? And like, what advice should they be ignoring?
I would ask them to more observe the world, understand, and get as much experience as you can. And not an advice to take would be I would suggest them not to be more money conscious and be more experience and learning focused in their early days.
I love that advice.
Yeah, I think experience counts a lot, and as you grow, you realize that you learn from things that you don't expect to, and then it helps you in the long term.
Completely agree. I think more practical learning needs to really be there in our curriculums.
Are you taking in interns from our college or hiring from DJ?
Oh yeah, so since I believe every year we have interns from DJ Samvi, comms or sometimes under the EXTC.
Our next segment is called Not the Onion, presenting 4 news articles that are mind-blowingly ridiculous that they could have been written by The Onion, a satirical news company. However, one is a fake article created by us. You have to guess which one is not The Onion.
So let's start Not the Onion. The first article, Taliban says it will stop fighting in COVID-19 areas. A sigh of relief in this difficult time for Afghanistan. Taliban spokesperson has recently said that if God forbid the outbreak happens in an area where we control the situation, then we will stop fighting in that area. Then the second article is a Venezuelan Navy ship sank after attacking a German cruise ship. So what happened was the German cruise ship was doing regular maintenance round, and the Venezuelan Navy and the guards, they saw this as aggressive and an act of piracy. So what they did was they rammed into the cruise ship, but the Navy ship sank and the cruise ship did not. It was unharmed. So the Venezuelan military called this as cowardly and act of criminal behavior, since after the Navy, Venezuelan Navy ship sank, they did not even help. The German cruise liner didn't even help them come up. So that was the second. The third one is a UP couple has named their newborn kid Sanitizer. So close on the heel of parents naming their kids in the COVID-19 era, some have come up with a name called Lockdown and Corona. So now a UP couple has named their kid Sanitizer. So they said that this is our contribution in the fight for coronavirus. And then the fourth one is a Scottish distillery has started hosting virtual whiskey tours. So what they're doing is, after you sign up for the tour, they will send you some whiskey samples, and then they have a web session where they will go around tasting and then asking their customers about the taste. So one of the people who took the virtual whiskey tour said that it's super creative and a great way to bring personalization to people out there. So those were the 4 news articles: Taliban, Venezuelan Navy, UP couple, and Scottish distillery. So where I'm starting with you, which one do you think is fake?
I believe Taliban is the fake one.
Taliban is the fake one. Okay, cool. Atit.
I think the UP parents.
Kid
Yep.
Sanitizer. Okay, cool. And then Eloni.
The UP sanitizer one is hilarious. It should be true. I think the Taliban as well, because recently I saw some attacks in Canada. I don't know.
Cool. So this is the first time I have come with a good news article. So all 3 of you are wrong. The fake one was the Scottish distillery one. I made it up. There are no virtual tours happening. Taliban is actually true. They said that they won't be attacking people in COVID-19 hit areas in Afghanistan. Additionally, they are going around in PPE suits and helping people understand. Yes, helping people understand the dangers of COVID. Yeah. And then UP couple is also true. This is a news article from yesterday.
But I
called Sanitizer.
Thank you so much, Virang. Thank you for joining us on the show. And we are going to be linking your website and your LinkedIn account down here for people to reach out to you and share their queries or ask their questions to you.
So that's about it, folks. We will be back next week with another guest and another story. We would love to hear your thoughts about the episode. Feel free to reach out to us on Instagram, Twitter, or Facebook. You can just search What the Hat Podcast. Also, subscribe to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Castbox, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcast from, so you never miss out on the next episode. This is Hiloni, Atit, and Tapan signing off, and this was What the Hat.